So hello everyone, a very warm welcome to our first episode of CPAs Unplugged. Today we've got a very special guest, Mark Koziel, who's the president and CEO of Allinial Global, a mentor, a thought leader in the world of public accounting, a very influential face. So hello Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Varun.
So Mark, when I think about you, I don't know where to start, where to end. So why don't you talk about yourself and tell us your story?
Well, it's been an interesting journey, I'd say. I first started in public accounting in 1991 in Buffalo, New York, small town, small business, not-for-profits, just a great learning. I say that, I really got my hands dirty with Main Street America in the audit space and small business. And so, from there, it's been 12 years public accounting, 3 years in political media. I went to work for a client of mine for 3 years that did TV and radio for political campaigns and for public affairs. And then I got the call from AICPA in 2006 to join AICPA, moved my family from Buffalo down to Durham, North Carolina. And yes, that was a major weather decision more than anything else, get out of the snow. And I had 15 wonderful years at AICPA.
And you've enjoyed the good weather for so many years.
That's right. And so then in 2020, I had the opportunity for Allinial. I've known the association and network space for a long time. Met with every one of them over a period of years. And for me to make a move out of AICPA, it had to be absolutely the right place to go. And the Allinial position just felt right to me. And it's been a great 3 years so far. So it's been fun.
Wow. So you became a CPA in 1993?
91. 93, yeah. So 91, I graduated, 93.
So did you realize it's exactly been 30 years? This is your 30th year as a CPA?
It is. That's right.
So how have you seen public accounting evolve over this very large, 3 decades in today's world are like 3 generations?
It is, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, it's hard to believe it's 30 years. But what's interesting, and I still keep in touch with people at my first firm and people from my second firm, and the work has changed a bit, I guess, based on what technology does. Client demands are greater today than they were, but at the end of the day, that client relationship is still ultimate paramount of everything that we do. And that public trust becomes so important in who we are and what we do. So those, as kind of the base of the profession, have remained the same. Now all the little pieces that go from there, all the new advisory services that are out there that we do. We've always been in the advisory space. How we do it is different. The audit is still an audit. Tax is still tax. Tax software is still bad, no matter how many years we've been trying to fix that. And then you look at things like client accounting services and how much that has evolved over time, but it's still being that trusted advisor to the client in a different way. But client accounting's been around for 100 years.
Absolutely.
But there's been firms that are still trying to do it the same way they did it 100 years ago, and there's opportunity with technology to make it different today. And so there are all kinds of additional services. Now you have ESG as an opportunity, and people are like, ESG, well, it's so new. I'm like, it's kind of similar. Like in the not-for-profit world back in the day, we had what they called the A133 audits. So you had to actually audit the programs of federally funded not-for-profits. And, auditing those programs, it didn't make me an expert on understanding what some of the criteria were for how certain not-for-profits selected the consumer that they were going to benefit or the type of program that they were running. Definitely wasn't a healthcare expert of how that runs, or even in student loan program and how that does, but because it was attached to the financial statement, it made sense. And that's where ESG, I think, comes into play. We'll have to have some engineers and some things on certain certain environmental things that we need to prove. But at the end of the day, pulling that report into the financial report makes a lot of sense for the profession.
Absolutely. So you started in public accounting in the 1990s, when we teach for the CPA program, one of the landmark events is the Sarbanes-Oxley, just before that, of course, Enron happened, and how was the entire public accounting, the profession responding at that time? I mean, and you were in public accounting back then.
I was.
Was everybody scared being an auditor for some time, or it's just like one-off event which just happened and then it just passed away? And
what's interesting again is you come back to that client relationship piece, right? Is the fact that I would talk to my clients about it, and being their auditor for some of those clients, I said, well, have you followed the news of this thing and Sarbanes-Oxley and all this other issues that are coming up with it? Have you followed that? What do you think? I mean, do you see auditors as the bad guy now? And they're like, no, you're my auditor, you're my guy. So you're no different than you were the day before. So that relationship again really kind of trumped what the news media was talking about around audits and the risk of audits. Absolutely. And we've had other instances of things now, and you always have that knee-jerk regulatory reaction to it. And I was spending my years in AICPA, and as things were developing there, especially outside the U.S., it was interesting to see how people were responding to it, how they want to kind of influence the profession in different ways that really kind of aren't going to make the audit any less risky. I always like to look at the audit committees and the boards that you have inside of these organizations is the real driving force. If somebody wants to cheat the auditor, they're going to work really hard to cheat the auditor. And being in there and being on it all the time, and True. The audit doesn't look at 100% of everything. These things happen, and so it's risk. But as a profession, the audit's still trustworthy. We're a trusted profession overall. It was literally no effect, I believe, on the average auditor or the average CPA firm out there.
So, when you started your career in public accounting, you were working for a couple of mid-tier public accounting firms, that's a question that we always get from a lot of potential candidates who are trying to get into the profession.
Right.
Where do I start with? Do I start with a big firm, let's say a big four or a top 10 firm? Do I start with a mid-tier firm? Pros and cons, what do you think? I mean, your perspective when you got started into the profession, and now that you're the president of the alliance with so many firms, how do you weigh the pros and cons, typically from the perspective of a potential candidate who's considering, okay, I want to start my audit career, I want to start my tax career. Where do I start with? How do I grow myself?
Right. It's interesting because as I look back, first and foremost, I went to school for accounting because I said I wanted to get in the FBI. That's why I chose accounting as my major.
Wow.
And my best friend's father, who's like a father than me, was a cop. My best friend and a bunch of our other friends all went to school to be cops. And so my friend's father says, yeah, you go for accounting. We'll get you into the FBI so that when you come back to town and you show up to the scene, you could tell my yo-yo son and all his buddies, stand aside, I'm in charge, right? Not quite in those words, but I cleaned up the story a little bit. And so I didn't know anything about public accounting. I grew up blue-collar family, didn't know anything about CPA, public accounting, and the like. And so I kind of stumbled into it. And the fact that I started at a local firm, I think, helped my career greatly because it was the right place. It was Main Street America. And being able to see things and not being kind of lost in the numbers of everybody that comes in. It was a tough time to recruit when I started because there were a bunch of layoffs and the savings and loans all were going under at that time. And so it was different. But, it was, call it dumb luck that I ended up at the firm that I started with. Started as an auditor because most did. If you ask anybody, when I was doing recruiting, I'd ask students, do you want to be an auditor or a tax person? And most times we'd figure out that it was probably a favored professor that they had more so than them understanding what the work entailed.
But I think the audit role is closer to the FBI role than the tax.
It does, yeah, right. So we're going to go in and get the bad guys, kind of. But fortunately, that never happened. My clients were trusted. But I think that folks have to understand the differences in firm size. And at Allinial, we have 55 firms in the U.S., 60 North America, and 260 globally. And we have all kinds of different size firms. We have 3 that are in the top 15. We have a number that are in the top 100. But then we also have some smaller firms. I always look at it like in the U.S., the marketplace for us, we have kind of our anchor firms, like a mall, right? That you have to have your anchor tenant, and then you have all of your smaller boutique things that maybe they do specialties, or maybe they're just a general store, but they're there and supported by people who are driven to the area by all of the diversity of size and diversity of shops. We have that diversity of size, diversity of firm in who we are. So it's not always that we want the biggest firm for a particular engagement, especially a lot of our firms are interacting globally together. They may not need a large firm for a particular engagement, and they want to focus on one of our smaller firms.
But as a candidate, what's my career progression within any of the firms, whether I look at a slightly larger firm or a boutique firm?
Everybody looks at the money, and the largest of firms may pay a little bit more, not a ton more. They're all within a range, right? So, but everybody says, well, I'm going to take the highest offer, and it may not be the potential of career choice. And I even think that...
But learning-wise?
Well, learning. I mean, I think that you're going to learn faster in a smaller firm. It's going to be different. It's going to be a different type of work. But, you're going to get access to the client faster. You're going to have client relationships faster than you would get necessarily in a larger firm, the largest of firms. But all of our firms, I think, have a really strong interaction inside of Allinial, really strong interaction with their clients. Just because they're bigger inside of Allinial and who we are doesn't mean that they're working on the biggest of clients. I mean, we have billion-dollar firms, but they're still doing small company engagements as well.
Absolutely.
They're just, the volume and the number of cities that they're in has become larger than some that are maybe a one-office market. So, yeah, I think all of that, I do think you're going to have that client relationship is going to be different. The learning, the career progression isn't as stiff, right? Because those that are superstars that can work through the system faster will be given that opportunity. I also think for those who, I am just all in on public accounting. I think being in the CPA profession is an incredible profession to be in. To be a revenue generator for the business and what you do versus being that controller, CFO in business and industry where you're the first to go. If your company sells out to somebody else, what do they eliminate? The cost centers go. So I've always said that. All are great careers, but I always say give public accounting a chance. Just because the firm you're with now doesn't fit right for you doesn't mean there's not another firm out there that would fit better. And I do think that there's all those opportunities, or start your own. You know what? And we're seeing less of that today.
So many entrepreneurs, own firms.
Great word. You know what? Entrepreneur. Being in a firm, no matter the size, you are generally an entrepreneur. When you get to that partner level. And thinking entrepreneurially is, I think, something that we don't teach enough in the profession. And I think that's something that's really important to think of yourself that way and give yourself the ability to take on more responsibility as an entrepreneur would. And you don't want to say risk necessarily in audits, but the risk taker in the firm is the one that kind of sticks their neck out or raises their hand and says, you know what, I want to do that. I want to learn new things. And telling people that that's where you want to be versus being kind of complacent and waiting for everyone to come to you, being that risk taker and trying new things, even though they may be out of your original comfort zone.
So how long does it take typically, for an associate staff to become partner, and what changes, right? How's the life of a CPA partner?
Today? They're all working harder than ever because they can't find the people at the lower levels to get it done. But partners today, first and foremost, the profession as a whole, partners are doing well. Partners are making money, getting to that partner level. There is gold at the end of that rainbow. And we're seeing firms that are incredibly successful. And, I know it's that dangling carrot that people don't want to wait around for, but the rewards are there to be able to take care of your family, to do the things that you want to do, make sure your retirement's set, all those things put together just makes the partner role absolutely amazing in my estimation. And I see a lot of great success there. So it's something that you should want to attain. How long does it take? 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, may be different for each person. But I do think that those that have a good mentor, those that, again, raise their hand and really say that they are looking to attain that. Maybe you don't want to be a partner. And you know what? That's okay too. And I think that's where firms have to figure that out as well. If you could be a highly successful controller out in business and industry somewhere, you could be a highly successful senior manager in a firm doing things. You're not going to get compensated the same way, right? But you're also in a controller in a company, you're not going to get compensated the same way. So why not have firms that have career managers? Client accounting services, I think, is really available to be able to see that and watch people work on multiple things. I like the variety. I always liked working on different clients and being in different places and getting to see different things.
And I think the prestige also associated with the profession, right? The CPA license, especially when you look at it from a public accounting standpoint. So Mark, this is a prestigious profession, very, very powerful, very respected. Why do we see a dwindling pool of new candidates getting into the profession? Why is the pipeline shrinking? I mean, why do we have an account? What's said? I mean, I was there in one of the conferences of the AICPA, and the question was, how do we make accounting cool again? How do we make accounting glamorous again? How do we make it sexy? So.
I don't know that
is
I
it
can
something
say
that you need to do?
again. Yeah, I think we have to do it initially. I don't think we've ever made it sexy. So thinking of it differently. But the pipeline has changed significantly. And first and foremost, it is sheer math that the pipeline is going to shrink, right? People want to blame different policies that have taken place in the profession. Outright, the pipeline is going to shrink because it's shrinking for all degrees, right? There's just simply less kids going to school. The number of baby boomers retiring and the number of Gen Zs that are available are far less. You're not going to replace people one for one. Impossible. The numbers aren't there. And, I realize in the U.S., there are many firms in the U.S. who don't want to hear that we're not alone. But, I just finished in the Asia Pacific region, and I'm in Hong Kong, and they're talking about the same thing, their pipeline shortage. And in Singapore, they're talking about their pipeline shortage. And in South Africa even, they're still talking about their pipeline shortage. The UK, same thing. Europe, it is everywhere in the accounting profession. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually pool the resources together of all of these countries and really think of a way to make the CPA, CA, the accounting profession look different than it looks today? An awareness campaign. I didn't know about public accounting 30 years ago. Thanks for reminding me it was 30 years now. Now I'm feeling old.
And you tried to get into the FBI, you became an auditor.
That's right. So I think that, a lot of that awareness becomes important. And then I also think that no matter what country we go to, we still have a entry-level problem around salaries. And I've been looking at some data that average starting salary of an accounting major versus the average starting salary of a finance major, a marketing major, and a general business major, the accounting major is lagging behind all of the others.
Compared to engineers, right?
Engineers, forget it. I mean, the engineers are way higher than that. So, but the engineers are the type of talent that we're looking for. Data analysts, computer science, all of them are outpacing the starting salary from where we're at. And I think that we need to focus on our pricing mechanisms so that we can pay people more at that entry level, and we really need to move up the starting salaries. I had someone tell me recently, and it was not in the U.S., it was in another market, but they go back, they were, graduated 30 years ago. They had 3 offers coming out of school. They had 2 local firms who each offered them $28,000 back in the day. That was the market rate. And then they had an investment bank offer them $60,000.
Wow.
Which offer do you think they took?
60,000. Okay.
Yeah. Now, as an investment banker, you work crazy. We don't own hard work. We talked about this early. We don't own working hard. And investment bankers, you know what? That is a tough business to be in, but they're making a lot of money. And so whether or not they stay in that, there is a lot of churn there. There may not be as many of those lucrative jobs available as there were the $28,000 jobs for us back 30 years ago. So now we're at pace of, depending on the market, 60, 70, 75,000 is the average starting salary. It's good, but still not paced where the other jobs are. And that's what we are fighting against and competing with all of those other majors for less people. I mean, it's naturally happening, so we got to figure that out.
So, with the talent pool that's shrinking in here, and I'm sure even at Allinial, you have a lot of your member firms having this entire talent shortage, accountant shortage, troubling them. We've heard firms saying they've let gone of business. Sometimes you make your existing team work harder, right? More number of hours, and that sort of starts a vicious cycle sometimes. So, how are your firms, or how are you advising firms to tackle this accounting shortage? Is it, outsourcing, trying to look at talent pool in multiple other countries, technology? I mean, how do you think firms are tackling? And of course, you're trying to increase the talent pool domestically, but that'll take some time to sort of replenish.
There's a variety of things I think that come up against this. Number one, we've underpriced services, and so we've taken on more work now with less people. So we're asking our people to do more.
Exactly.
We create kind of this revolving door at the 2 to 4 year mark. Everybody says that they would kill for a senior experienced person 2 to 4 years, right? Yep. They don't exist. I said, if you find a senior accountant 2 to 4 years, it is either a unicorn sighting or they're not good. I mean, those are your 2 options currently. I mean, it's incredibly hard, right? But we're going to keep expending resources to try and figure that out, rather than say, you know what, maybe we need to reset, take a step back a little bit. Let's take a look at our client base. Maybe it's the fact that we need to fire clients, right? We're going to pull back a little bit and tell our people, you know what? We're not doing that anymore. We want to make sure you stay, so we're going to pull back. We're going to manage the amount of workload that we have. And then we're going to fill up the pipeline coming in so that we can develop our own seniors going forward. And if we put the right policies in place, flex policies and the like, we can get to the point where we're going to have a higher retention rate, and we're going to be able to grow again exponentially by being able to fill the backline. You mentioned about the pipeline. If that pipeline has shrunk coming out of U.S. colleges and universities, the 2 pieces, and I always showed a pyramid when I was at AICPA, and they still have a slide that they use for it, that you have the old pyramid model where we would hire a lot of people at the entry level, and we'd hope some of them stay. And those that would stay, we would promote into a manager level. And then those few managers who stayed, then the ones that stayed from there, we would promote into director. And then the ones who are left over after director that actually haven't left since, we now promote into partner. Doesn't mean we got the best and brightest out of that bottom pool, but they're just the ones that outlasted everybody else to stay in the firm. And so, and I say that kiddingly, I mean, we got incredibly smart partners, but when you think about that as being the model, that's not sustainable for us now when we've taken out that bottom end.
Got it.
And I always show like the 2 corners of the pyramid. One is being replaced by outsourcing and the other by technology, and we have to do both. So we're talking a lot to our firms of all sizes in the U.S. that outsourcing is absolutely necessary. We have a number of our larger firms have their own dedicated office in India for their U.S. operation. And then we have other firms that are outsourcing and offshoring to our India-based firms that we already have established there with relationships that they're able to take that on too. And it's not just India today. Now it's the Philippines. It is a little bit of South Africa, but the talent pool there has shrunk a lot compared to the Philippines and India. Philippines for me is client accounting, tax, some audit, lighter on technology talent. India's got it all. It's got the total package with the technology talent on top of the accounting, audit, and tax that's there too. So, it's absolutely necessary. And I've talked to our member firms. We've had probably 8 firms in the last year who have now started to outsource and offshore, and we continue to have those conversations. When I check in with some of our CEOs of our firms and we talk about it, and they say, how's it going with outsourcing? Well, we're still talking about it. And I say, okay, when are we going to stop talking about it and when are we going to do it?
Start doing it.
Because this is going to be, and you make that answer, that is going to help your retention. Because if you don't come up with an answer to your staff today, they can just naturally assume that you're not trying to fix the problem, and their work-life balance is going to be offset a little bit. And without change, then they have the ability to be able to walk out the door and say, you know what, they're not going to change it any. It's going to be like this. I don't want to be around and be a part of that. So it's essential today to provide answers to your team members.
So Mark, as much as there's a talent shortage in the US, you have a talent surplus in India. And I'm not saying it's a skilled talent surplus, but there is still a lot of accountants in India, perhaps, we call this a demographic capital. I mean, we are the world's largest country in terms of population.
Sure.
Accounting is still a very, very exciting major. And when kids pass out of school, there are typically 2 tracks. One is commerce, which often leads into accounting and also business. Mm-hmm. And the second is science, which is engineering and medicine predominantly, apart from other niche fields. So you still have a lot of accountants coming in. You still have hundreds of thousands of folks who are into the local chartered accountancy qualification, doing really, really well. As Miles, we've been sort of building the CPA ecosystem. Really sort of talking about the opportunities that you have, for Indian accountants to work with global firms, and a lot of them are super excited about working with, multinational companies, public accounting firms from the US. The big 4s have led it, but you see a lot of smaller public accounting firms now having a huge shop there. So as much as we have a lot of accountants in India working from India, for the public accounting firms, and also from the industry, right? You'd also have a lot of Fortune 500 companies setting shop there. The new model for Miles, or the evolution for Miles, as we call it, Miles 2.0, is also having Indian accountants coming into the US, doing a Master's of Accounting, which we convert to STEM, and working in the US for 3 years. And, you've really helped us champion this model across the Allinial Global firms. What do you think of this? What's your take on this talent moving across countries, international talent coming in, or especially Indian talent, which is one of the hubs for outsourcing coming into the US? Sure. How do you see this model building up?
Well, it's filling the schools, right? And so this pipeline shortage that we're talking about, this is an answer. This is doing something out of the ordinary to try and come up with a different result, which I love. And I met Shandu at the AICPA Engage conference, and the minute he started to talk about what you're doing with this program and the pilot program, and Tracy Walker was sitting there from RSM. I've known Tracy a number of years. She runs their D&I program, and she talked about how RSM just jumped right on it that first year.
They did, yeah.
I said to Shandu there, I'm like, I'm in. Let's do it. Let's get our firms, and because the way that I see it, and learning more and more about it, like firms really need to sit down with you guys. I can't be the one selling it because you have the passion for it, but and also I think the right answers, because firms are giving it the caution because of the H-1B. There's a variety of reasons why they're saying it's not going to work, but they're not looking at the big picture when thinking about what the possibility is here to be able to bring these students in. So you're able to recruit virtually. They're going to go to school for a year. We're going to get them after that year. They're going to come over here. They're going to be almost a lock for 3 years. Now, tell me any firm currently today that their new employee that they would guarantee are going to be here 3 years from now. I'd say they barely have a 70 to 75% chance of that happening. Yet here, because of the H-1B promise, it's going to be important that that person stays at the same firm to go through the application process. Really hard to get the H-1B. So if they get it, great, and we're working on getting the right legal support to our firms to make that process easier, because it's not easy, it's hard. But when you get to that point of that they've been accepted, getting that process to happen better. And if they're not accepted after 3 years, then they're going to go back home to India. Still a great employee, I would hope, that you would want to retain. If you don't already have an India operation there, we have firms that are there that they can set that person up in shop to be able to still work for you and just be, some type of a cost plus arrangement with the member firm that we already have. You're not going to lose that person in 3 years, and you can start to build up that India operation. And this pipeline is going to continue to get stronger. You had 50 first year, 300 second year. I can see this getting to 1,500, 3,000 in some point in time.
Next year.
Yeah. And so we're just going to get to the point where we're going to have the ability of these students. And, and the fact that they have on average 4.5 years of accounting experience already, you're going to hire them as a new hire. You're going to save on the FICA tax, right? Because they're a STEM placement. When we laid out the program, I said we have to be in. We have 7 or 8 of our firms that are in now. More will come along. I am confident of that. That we'll probably have most of our firms in the U.S. that are going to be part of this. But absolutely a fantastic way to help build the pipeline and get the ecosystem. Today's ecosystem is a global ecosystem.
Absolutely.
It has to be looked at that way. We have secondments today. We have secondees going from different countries today as it is. And so, I travel the world. Literally last week, I traveled around the world. I went LA to Hong Kong to Bali, Bali to Doha, Doha to JFK. I literally went all the way around.
We just traveled above India.
Yeah, right.
Indian airspace.
That's it. So, it's when you look at the global marketplace, it's just amazing how small the world has become inside of this, and it continues to get smaller every day. So we have to consider other ways. We have to consider other markets. When you put the U.S. economy now is competing against all these other economies. Germany announced, it was probably about a year ago, that their technical jobs that I would put kind of in that STEM category, they have an initiative where they want to import 400,000 new people to Germany to be able to support the retirements and all of the key positions that they have in Germany currently. So that's what we're now going to compete against, is the fact that Germany and all these other countries are going to be also fighting for talent. They're not going to be able to replace within countries, so they have to find other ways to get things done. And that's going to be the way of the world going forward.
True. And, I don't know if you saw that article in Washington Post a few months back. It says the accountant shortage threatens capitalism's future. So,
yeah, AI and technology can help satisfy some of it,
True.
But we need to keep the pipeline moving. And in order for firms to grow, they need to have a certain number of people. It's funny because you see this about the accounting shortage, and yet there's all these other articles that say that AI is going to displace the accountant forever.
Yeah.
And
So
a student sees that.
Yeah.
Student sees that and says, well, wait a minute, why am I going to go into a career that's going to get replaced by technology? It's not going to get replaced. I could go back stories, and kids would probably laugh at the fact that, there were these old punch cards that you had to use for data entry in computers. And, the tax returns of old, back in the days, they all got shipped to a tax processing center and all done in one place, right? And then you would get it back and then you'd make changes and back and forth, crazy. Then the personal computer, oh my God, that's going to replace all these tax accountants that are out there doing all this processing. No, it turns out we were able to do more work and get out of it. So we've been through all these iterations.
Short of tax accountants today.
That's right. And blockchain is going to replace the auditor. And yet it's enhancing the audit and how things, and now there needs to be more audits because someone has to actually audit the blockchain, right? And so it's just, we keep evolving as a profession. We're not dying, we are evolving constantly. And as long as we stay ahead of that, I think it's key.
Amazing. So you say evolving as a profession, and also a lot of career paths that we see with candidates, who coming in, and you have a few 100,000 accountants who've left the profession trying to do different things.
Yep.
You did that as well. So you left public accounting and you joined a political media firm. I mean, how did that pan out? I mean,
and I not as a disservice to my old firm, but I enjoyed my career there. I was, in essence, at the time, it was a director level role, so it was in theory non-equity partner at the time. I got to run my own business line. I had this client in political media. They did TV and radio for political campaigns and for public affairs, and so. They were after me for like a year to come in and run their time buy division. And eventually, as I did that, to move from Buffalo to Washington, D.C. and run the office out of D.C. And so, it was the right day that, and I said this with any person inside your firm, your people are getting poached constantly. They're getting offered constantly. And I don't necessarily want to know that point in time when they said I'm leaving. I want to know the day that they decided to take the interview. So the day I said to that client, all right, let's talk further. What was it that happened? And I know what it was. And I sat down with the managing partner, and he was never really, didn't really understand it the way that I was trying to portray it. But for me, it was, I don't know what the succession plan is of the firm, and am I going to put my future, my family's future, in the hands of that when I don't know? And it wasn't from lack of asking, and even in that meeting where I said I was leaving, and I said, I don't see a succession plan. And he said, we have a succession plan. I said, okay, what is it? Well, we have a succession plan. I said, okay, I don't know what it is.
Am I a part of it?
Yeah, exactly. So I can only assume if I don't know it, I'm not on it. And if that's the case, and he says, we have a plan. And I'm like, all right, well, I can make up, absent information, I can make that plan be whatever I think it is. And based on that, I'm making the decision and I'm moving on. And it was hard. It was hard on him, and it was, it was hard on me, but I did it. Went into politics for 3 years, which was absolutely crazy. And I said,
you mean crazier than accounting?
I said, I got to get back to the normalcy of CPAs. But the one thing it did teach me.
You're saying it's not only the CPAs that work hard, is it?
Oh, well, in political media. So I remember we did a presidential campaign in 2004. And it was a candidate that got late, who came into the race late. We were basically skipping Iowa, going right to New Hampshire. And we're just trying to make up time, and the spots and the ideas for ads are coming left and right. And we're trying to get them up on air, and you got to get on Boston TV. We're shooting the shot in New Hampshire, because the minute you shoot in Boston, someone calls you out for a landmark that they see, and they're like, that didn't happen here. So you go to New Hampshire, and then they're driving it to Boston to try and get into the production facility. They're shooting it up online for me to see it. I was the last defense before that ad went on air. I had to make sure that all the political compliance was on it, that there wasn't any glitches.
You're a public accounting guy, so they're like, they trust you on that.
I guess. I'm going to audit the spot. And so, I literally would probably, I'm still talking to production till about 1 o'clock in the morning. And then at that point now, they're just deep dive and trying to get this final spot done. And so I'm like, all right, when you get there, call me. And I had, in my living room, I had my computer in front of me, I had my cell phone on my chest, and I was waiting for the call to come in to say that they posted the spot up, take a look at it. And from there, I have so it was, we worked all hours of the night on presidential campaigns, on Senate campaigns, and you have 15 clients. Every one of them want to think that they're your only client in the world, but they're not. And so you're just constantly doing that. And then all of a sudden on election day, it's just all over. Phones stop ringing. It just gets eerily quiet. There are no extensions like you have in accounting with tax returns, right? So it was an insane pace in a very compressed, short amount of time.
This sounds even more exciting and busier than an audit or a tax busy season.
I don't know if I would call it exciting when you're sitting at a conference table about this long and your candidate's down at the end and they're up for re-election and they got redistricted and something happened in the ad that they weren't happy about and they take the book that's in front of them and throws it across the room at you because they're all just a little bit nutty about, it is about saving their job versus what they stand for at that point in time. Not that I want to get into politics, but it was hard. It was.
So you wanted to get into FBI, couldn't get into FBI, got into public accounting,
Yep.
And then you missed that excitement and you said, okay, let me try politics. Political media.
I love the public affairs piece was great, but I said that, and I've had this. Barry Melanson was CEO of AICPA, and we had those discussions over the years. And I said that I left the profession for 3 years. He said, "Well, no, you didn't leave the profession. You went into business and industry." I said, "No, like going to business and industry is being a controller or CFO, where I can still get support from the AICPA and the state societies around what it is that I do." I'm like, there wasn't, I don't think, another person in the country as a CPA doing what I was doing, right? Time buy. I don't even know how you buy time anymore with the way that things are all streamed and internet, the whole 9 yards. Like there's just not commercials anymore. So that entire industry has transformed itself. But I was out completely. But also coming back to the AICPA, having public affairs and political media experience actually helped me for some of the advocacy-based work that we had to do at AICPA. Also taught me how to run campaigns, running a political campaign and running a campaign to influence public opinion become very similar. And so that really did help my career as I went on. So I appreciate the experience I had in the 3 years that I was in political media, but I am never going back.
And then how was your journey at the AICPA?
AICPA
was a pretty long one, and then
no, it was. I started as a senior manager. I left as an executive vice president. I got to meet with so many firms, just learn from so many firms. Our entire team was out there, and I would travel, during the busy times. I'd be on the road 3 cities a week, going to firm retreats, firm meetings, partner meetings, association and network meetings, state society meetings, and just talking about the profession and learning from others as I would be there. I would not only just want to provide the presentation, but I'd also get feedback from others on what connected, what resonated in that particular story and going from there. So it was a great learning experience and really prepared me for what I'm doing today.
So starting off as an auditor and now being a thought leader, an influencer, and trying to get those hundreds of thousands of people back into accounting or grow their careers in accounting. How does this feel? I mean, that's like quite a sea change from where you started versus where you are. I would say it's a great career progression, but how does it feel?
The entire profession has been fantastic. I mean, if I had to do it all over again, I would absolutely have done the same things that I did along the way. Becoming a CPA was instrumental to me. And I always used to say, I used to kid my professors in school when I was going to school to eventually get in the FBI, now CPA, and say, they're like, well, you're here to get an education. I said, I'm not here to get an education. I'm here to get a job. That's what I want. I'm trying to better myself coming out of blue collar family into something that's going to be, life changing for me in a different way. And it has been. And so I tell all my friends, have their kids. I have one son. He didn't go into accounting. He went into media. He's more like my wife in the creative side. But all my friends, I tell them, I said, have your kids get a degree in accounting. You tell me what city you want to retire in, and I'll get your kid placed there so that you can end up retiring in that city and having the family there too. So
I think that's amazing about accountants, right? We are all about ROI. So so I'm in college, I want a job, and I think that's what we see even with our talent pool, Mark. When the candidates are coming in, they're like Masters of Accounting, STEM, all that is great, but we're taking up a student loan and we need a job, the OPTPs, which sort of helps us repay that. And and you're right. We're working with firms across the country, and now excited about working with a lot of Allinial Global firms and so many different locations. Not just in the New Yorks and Chicago's of the country, but really getting in deeper and deeper into America and really experiencing that culture. And the good thing is we see a lot of candidates getting jobs early on, even before they start the program, the first few months into the program. So this has become really, really exciting, and and that's why we find this really scalable. So now, sort of moving fast forward, as the president and CEO of Allinial Global now, that you're mentoring so many of these firms, helping them scale up. What are the top challenges that you see, with the firms, or challenges that you're trying to resolve? Of course, the talent pool is one, but what are the other challenges that you see?
Yeah, pipeline still is at the absolute top of the chain on that.
And we see that all the time. Yeah. Any conference that we go to, I think the first discussion is, okay, how do we sort the talent pipeline?
I think change management is probably the biggest thing in process, right? So any firm that says, well, I need the latest, greatest technology, I'm going to implement that technology and all my problems will be solved. But without process, that technology isn't necessarily going to be successful on its own. So we have to have the right implementation. And I think going forward on that is focusing on the pricing. It's funny, I was talking to one of our CIO groups, right? So we got all the chief information officers together, and one of them was saying that some of their audit partners were complaining that they didn't want to implement the AI because the last AI they implemented, they watched utilization go down. Okay. I'm like, but that's the wrong measure. We shouldn't be looking at utilization. If we adopt that correctly, we should be able to be even more profitable inside of what we do. But if our pricing is based on hours times rate, and we've eliminated the hours, now how are we going to get paid? So we got to change our pricing mechanism at the same time that we're going to make the changes to get the technology implemented. And I was in Australia and I'm meeting with firms, and I said, so that technology piece that we're going to adopt, we become more efficient as a profession. Who should benefit from that savings, the client or us? And one of these poor young professionals says, the client. And I'm like, no, not the client. Us. We're the ones who implemented it. We invested in it. We need to have that rate of return on that. So we need to look at how our profitability is changing and how we're going to price our clients, because we can't keep pricing our clients on hours and rate. Absolutely. That doesn't apply anymore. We are a way different organization.
So that's for firms on one side, and the final thing, Mark, for a lot of the accountants who are taking up accounting, in the US, and also of course accountants from India who are now coming to the US, what will be your message, to these folks?
Get into public accounting, find the right fit. If that firm's not the right fit, find another firm that is. Absolutely. It can be a great career, but you know what? You have to also own your career. And so find that right mentor and be communicative inside of your firm and make sure that the firm knows full well you are very interested in being there for the future. And we see this in various firms that when people don't necessarily raise their hand, the firms will start to assume that their career path is different than what they want. That opening those communication lines is absolutely vital.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Mark, for your time today.
Thanks, Varun.
I really, really appreciate it. And looking forward to a very long and exciting partnership with Allinial Global. And of course, a lot of folks back in India are really excited about the placement drive that we're doing tomorrow. Of course, really excited to have all the alliance firms, Eisner Ramper, BPM, Weaver, and all the other firms who are coming in. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Varun.